Another one, extreme difficulty ending unhealthy relationships. I've talked about that on this channel, right? I've done an entire video on how to overcome some of the challenges with ending unhealthy relationships. People who are not people pleasers, people who have healthy boundaries, people who have the willpower to assert themselves, they'll come into contact with someone who's abusive, who's toxic, who's unhealthy, who is controlling, and within minutes, they will just be repelled by that person, right? They will just automatically get a vibe from them, get an energy from them that just, they disassociate from that person. Sometimes those who are people pleasers, they gravitate towards them. Not only do they gravitate towards them, but they find themselves in very emotional, tightly bonded relationships with them and find it very challenging to end those relationships, right? Despite the abuse, despite the unhealthy relationship that they're in, despite all of the things and the negative feelings that they're feeling, despite the pain and the suffering, despite being able to recognize and acknowledge all those things, they still have difficulty detaching from that relationship. So that's another characteristic. Here's another one, a tendency to avoid wanting to judge other people. I have found myself in this situation in the past where you find yourself consistently making excuses for people, right? Someone is being irresponsible, someone is doing something that makes you upset, makes you feel disrespected, makes you feel insulted, makes you feel like they're encroaching upon your boundaries, refusing to see the situation for what it is and just making excuses for that person, right? Where does that come from? A lot of times it's this fear and hesitation with judging people. We don't want to judge people. We don't want to see people as the unhealthy, toxic, abusive person that they are behaving as. Instead, we make excuses for them. Well, they just had a bad day, or maybe I did something to upset them, so right, we justify their behavior. Or well, they've been through they've had a rough past, or they've dealt with some tumultuous relationships, so we make excuses for their behavior and we justify their behavior rather than judging it at face value and accepting reality for what it is. Next on the list, entering relationships with people who are abusive or excessively demanding, right? When you have people pleaser tendencies, you tend to find yourself in relationships where there are people who feel entitled to and people who demand things that are just beyond the scope of what a healthy relationship would expect, right? They're very demanding, very entitled to your time, your money, your affection, your space. They want to escalate things very quickly. They want to move the relationship forward very quickly. They want you to tell things to them and share things with them and be open and honest about things. They want you to do things that just would not be characteristic of a healthy, boundaried relationship. So that's another thing to look for. Reluctance to put yourself first, that one goes without say, right? People pleaser, that kind of goes in the title. You are always putting someone else first. You are obsessed with this idea of making other people feel valued and appreciated and making them feel good, whilst sometimes neglecting your own needs, your own desires, your own wishes, right? And forfeiting your own boundaries and the things that keep you healthy. Next on the list, excessively conscientious, right? Excessively conscientious meaning this need to always do what is right. I always want to do what is right and what looks good and what has the best optics. I always want to make sure that I'm being fair and just with everyone. Well, not everyone has that same viewpoint, right? So if you walk around navigating the world, always wanting to do right by others and always wanting to be fair and just and treat them with respect, and you have other people who will just steamroll through and will manipulate, will lie, will deceive, will exploit, will take advantage in order to achieve their means. When you have those people enter a relationship or a friendship, one person is more than likely going to always be the target of abuse, target of controlling behavior, manipulative behavior, right? So it is not always healthy to have this conscientious mind of always seeing the best in others and always wanting to do right by others. Sometimes you have to stand your ground. Sometimes you have to be willing to, maybe insult or push back against or assert yourself or tell someone no. Sometimes you have to be willing to do those things in order to protect yourself, to protect your own emotional well-being. Another one, this one is one that I'm very familiar with. Always being readily willing to seek resolution or negotiation or compromise or closure, right? Do you find yourself in relationships or friendships always being the one to say, hey, let's talk about this. Hey, we're upset. Let's sit down. Let's meet. Let's compromise. Let's find a middle ground, right? Are you always the one to try to initiate and have those conversations? Always the one to try to seek resolution? Always the one to say, you know what? Maybe I could have done things a little differently. Maybe I could have handled that situation differently, right? Are you 10 times out of 10 always the person who's willing to do that whilst the other person never takes that role, right? Never takes that responsibility? If you are, that could be a sign that you struggle with being a people pleaser. If you have one person who's always willing to seek compromise and resolution, always willing to negotiate and say, hey, okay, I'm willing to let go of maybe some of these demands, or I'm willing to make some concessions, right? But the other person just, nope, this is what I want. And if you can't meet me, then, that's it. There's no negotiating, right? You will find yourself at the short end of the straw, so to speak, right? You always find yourself on kind of the negative end of a bad deal because you're sometimes negotiating from a place of weakness. Always, how do I put this? Always being willing to, when a person has done something wrong or done something that maybe merits them feeling bad about their behavior, merits them apologizing for it. If you always find yourself wanting to sort of rescue them from feeling guilty or feeling bad, right? I've been in scenarios where it's I don't like to hold grudges in a lot of different situations, right? So if someone has done something that has upset me, it made me feel bad, and they're apologizing for it and saying, yeah, I guess I really messed up, I will sometimes kind of jump to the rescue and say, hey, we all make mistakes, it's all good, right? And kind of sometimes in doing so will belittle my own feelings, right? Maybe there should be an extended, not them soaking themselves in guilt and shame, but there should be some deeper reflection on their end of acknowledging what they did. Maybe there should be a little bit more compassion from them. Maybe there should be that added step of, okay, I messed up and here's what I plan to do to resolve it, right? Here's my plan of attack moving forward. Sometimes I will try to take that monkey off of their back, and I don't like seeing them in a negative state, so I'll do whatever it takes to absolve them of that negative emotion, even if it means kind of belittling my own feelings and how I'm feeling about their behavior, right? So in a sense, I guess you can describe that as always wanting to minimize or diminish the other person's negative emotions about their behavior. So yeah. Another common one that I think is very relevant to being a people pleaser is this thought pattern that the price for, how do I describe this? If you do something to upset your partner, even if maybe it's a very minor infraction, it's a very small thing, being limited or restricted or controlled by this idea that the price of earning your partner's forgiveness is being miserable, right? I've been in relationships where I thought, okay, in order to get this person to forgive me, in order to get this person to see how earnest and sincere I am about my apology and about what I did to make them upset, even if it's a very minor thing that maybe I didn't intend to do, or maybe there was just a misunderstanding that led to them being upset. Not absolving myself, right? Take ownership, take responsibility. Even if I apologize and show the person that I was compassionate about that apology, I was characterized by this belief that, oh, if I made them feel bad, in order to show that I was sincere, in order to earn their forgiveness, I also had to feel bad. I also had to feel miserable, right? Which would often mean if I did something to upset them, whatever they did in response was kind of fair game, right? If I upset you and I did a level 1 infraction, if you did something at level 10, well, I upset you, I made you feel bad, so whatever you did in response to me, I guess it's fair, it's just, because now I should feel bad. I don't think that's a healthy way to navigate relationships, right? I've since learned that you can apologize, you can accept responsibility for what you did without being, having feelings of guilt and misery and depression and shame thrusted, upon you. It's possible to be sincere and say, hey, I apologize for hurting your feelings, I apologize for what I did or for what I said, and move the interaction on from there. You don't have to feel miserable yourself because you upset someone, right? So that's another one. And last but not least, the last characteristic is feeling like the price of a relationship, the price of a successful relationship is forfeiting your own boundaries, forfeiting your own desires, your own needs, your own thoughts. The number of times where I felt like in order to be in a relationship, it meant that I had to give up my own happiness in some way or another, right? I had to give up my own independence, my own emotional independence, give up my own sort of sanity, because that's what it means to be in a relationship. Means making your significant other happy. It means making someone else happy. So the price of doing that means that, hey, I just kind of have to accept being unhappy and accept that this is just kind of the price. This is what the price tag of being in a relationship means. And anyone who's successfully worked themselves out of an unhealthy relationship, anyone who is currently in a healthy relationship, knows that, hey, wow, it doesn't have to be, me forfeiting my own boundaries. It doesn't have to be me being someone's emotional doormat and being a pushover in order to make them happy, right? It can be a win-win negotiation. I can feel good whilst they can feel good. I can feel fulfilled whilst they can feel fulfilled, right? We both can get something beneficial out of this negotiation. It doesn't have to be me give, me sacrifice, me compromise, me let go of my desires and ideas and thoughts and dreams and pursuits, and you have all of those things for yourself, right? It's not a healthy way of thinking about life and thinking about relationships. So that is my extensive list of signs, in my opinion, of being a people pleaser. Those are things that, as you all can see, that I've been able to relate to, maybe in my own life, or I've seen in others. Maybe a lot of you were listening to that thinking, wow, that sounds like me. Wow, this sounds like me in my last relationship, right? So I think in each of those characteristics that I talked about, there's an unhealthy thought pattern that you've developed that's led you to kind of support that pattern of behavior. And until you address that, until you solve that puzzle, you will continue to behave in that way. So thanks for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen. Hope that you enjoyed this video. Hope that you got some value from it. I know with a lot of those examples, you're like, man, is there any help for us? Can people who struggle with those things, can they work on them? Can they improve? Yes, I 100% believe that you can work on those things, that you can reject them from your life, reject them from your dating life, but it takes work. It's not just a walk in the park. You have to be willing to let go of certain habits, certain patterns that you've been holding on to for a long time. So let's work on doing that together as a team. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Click that thumbs up button if you did. Feel free to leave a comment, share some of your thoughts. Definitely subscribe to the channel. That way you'll be the first to know when we come out with new content each and every single week. And that's pretty much it. Hope that you enjoyed the video. Hope that you got some value from it. Signing off, signing out. Catch you all next week. Peace.